The last thing I expected on my first real vacation in years was to get accused of eco-terrorism by a woman in leopard print Crocs, holding a trembling chihuahua in one hand and a clipboard in the other, storming up my driveway like I'd just committed a crime against nature itself. Picture it. First morning, barely had my coffee, and she's already at full throttle, finger wagging in my face, hollering that I'm baiting invasive species with a hummingbird feeder I hadn't even hung up yet. At first, I honestly thought she was joking. Next thing I know, there are 3 cop cars in my gravel drive boxing in my truck, like I'm some kind of backwoods kingpin. And that's when I pulled out the deed, not just to the cabin, but the whole damn mountain which her so-called hermitic mansion was technically squatting on. 3 days earlier, I'd rolled up to my late uncle's place, out where the Blue Ridge melts into mist and gravel roads try their best to reclaim themselves. It was a patch of wild that felt like a second chance. No deadlines, no blaring horns, just me, a thermos of coffee, and the kind of night sky that makes you remember you're alive. That first night I sat on the porch, just listening to the hush, letting the quiet untangle my nerves. But that didn't last. By sunrise, I'm filling a plastic bird feeder when I hear feet crunching up the path. Not a neighborly, "Hey there," just a woman in a hot pink windbreaker, all scowl. No greeting, wielding her clipboard like it's a badge. "You're in violation of community code. Section 4B, she says, before I've even said good morning. Now, I've dealt with plenty of bossy people in my day, but I'd never been accused of breaking imaginary HOA rules on private land. I'd inherited land my uncle had owned for decades, so I tried to explain polite at first, but she wouldn't hear it. Something about hummingbirds bringing in predators, endangering pets, and then she leans down to her chihuahua. "Don't worry, Muffin, he won't hurt you." I just laughed, which in hindsight was apparently the worst thing I could have done. That's when she called the cops. "Yes, I'd like to report an environmental hazard, hostile, non-compliant." I was still standing there holding a bag of sugar when she told the dispatcher I was threatening the ecosystem. 30 minutes later, 3 police cruisers rolled up like the place was under siege. First officer walks up dead serious, wants to see my ID proof I belong. I stay calm, reach into the truck for that deed. My uncle always told me to keep close. Handed it over, said nothing. Officer reads it, double checks, then gives me this look. "Sir, this says you own the whole ridge." I nod. Clipboard lady, yeah, Karen, obviously goes pale. She tries to argue the deed's a fake, but the second officer's already on the phone with dispatch, and the county records back me up. Once the cops left, I just sat on the porch thinking about how some folks, usually the loudest ones, just can't stand not being in charge, even if it means making up rules as they go. That night, I walked my boundaries and found fence posts moved, survey markers yanked, and a fresh private HOA property, no trespassing sign hammered smack in the middle of my land. That's when I knew this wasn't about birds, it was about power, about someone needing to control what isn't theirs. So the next morning I drove into town for trail cams, private property signs, even a drone if she wanted to play games, I'd answer with receipts. Sure enough, she was back before lunch taping a new flyer to a tree unauthorized structure under investigation. Fines pending. Compliance required immediately. Her name was all over it, plus a fake seal, She probably printed off the internet. For the next 2 days, Karen was silent. No flyers, no barking, just this eerie quiet that felt like the woods before a storm. On the third morning, I saw her rallying the neighbors, on her patio arms flailing like a general before battle. I grabbed my uncle's old binoculars and watched her play ringmaster, showing papers, pointing toward my cabin, firing them up. Later that day, I found new flyers on the trails, each more ridiculous than the last accusations of improper waste, unregulated wildlife, feeding even illegal excavation, all fiction, but spread like breadcrumbs for the neighbors. It was almost impressive the amount of effort she put into her paper trail. I checked the trail cams. There she was at midnight, flashlight in one hand, roll of tape in the other, planting those notices herself. The footage was gold proof of trespass, of fraud, of Karen caught red-handed. That night I wrote up a cease and desist letter, kept it professional, laid out the boundaries, cited county law. Next morning I handed it to her in person. She tried to spin it like I was threatening her, shrieking about community leadership. I just kept walking. By noon, another sheriff's cruiser rolls up. Same officer, same slow walk up the driveway. This time I'm ready, offered him water, showed him the footage, the flyers, the midnight trespassing. He actually laughed. While this isn't arrest territory yet, it's harassment and likely criminal trespass if it keeps up. He took a copy for evidence, drove straight to her house, and 15 minutes later, I heard shouting echoing up the ridge. Some neighbors started drifting my way, whispering, asking questions. The tide was turning. Next morning, I woke to a new sign nailed to my gate, this time scrawled in red marker, Community Watch Zone. Violators will be photographed and prosecuted. Underneath report. Suspicious mountain men. I just shook my head. This was getting desperate. So I repositioned my cameras, set a decoy toolbox, and survey flags. Sure enough, Karen came sneaking around after midnight, yanking up my flags, snapping photos. The camera got it all. But here's the twist. When I finally went to the county office to pull the official survey maps, I found that her deck, her precious HOA headquarters, wasn't just close to my property. It was on my property, a full 32 feet of it. She'd spent all this time claiming I was the trespasser, while her community center was literally squatting on my land. My attorney, Mason, is a calm guy, the kind whose silence rattles more than any shouting. He lined up the maps, the photos, the evidence, and walked me through the options, a formal encroachment motion or the nuclear option forcing her to remove the deck entirely. Word spread fast. By the next HOA meeting, half the neighbors had dropped out, some coming to my place with banana bread or stories about Karen threatening to report them for minor stuff, kids' toys in the yard, a Zoom call after 5. The real estate agent called a few weeks later. Karen's house was quietly up for sale. No signs, no listings, just private offers. She claimed the area had become hostile to leadership. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. When the day came, she loaded her car at dawn, never looked back, just drove off into the pines. I bought her house through a shell company, gutted. It opened it up for hikers and volunteers. Called it Lookout Lodge, a place where the only rules were respect for the land and each other. Neighbors pitched in the woods, opened up laughter, replaced flyers. Doug, the retired surveyor, brought old maps and fresh lumber. Rose baked pies. The young guy with the recliner gave it a second life in the reading nook. One afternoon, I found an old boundary marker, rusted and bent, half swallowed by the forest. I stood there thinking this was never really about lines or rules. It was about letting go of fear of control of the illusion that any one person can own a place like this. Now the mountain felt lighter, like it had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. But peace is a funny thing up here. It's not about winning or revenge. It's about defending what matters, holding your ground when it counts, and letting the truth and time do the heavy lifting. I never wanted to be the hero, just a good neighbor. But when you stand up to a bully, you don't just change your life, you make space for everyone else to breathe easier too. So let's settle this. What would you have done if you were me? Does community mean rules, or does it mean knowing when to push back? Tell me down below, because around here the real stories never end at the property line.